Like he's got to
Yeah.
be able, doesn't he, to be able to not trash his tires as well. And he managed to, yeah, he got some blistering, but it was still, as you said, the quickest car, even though it was sliding around more in the corners.
I would say the quickest driver, not the quickest car. I think he really did a phenomenal job, and yeah, he's just driving that. He has that tiny edge on everybody else. It's just he's that extra sensitivity, extra speed of reacting, just to like balance that car magically, just on that tiny edge, is just incredible.
Is the other thing to coincide with this that, and you mentioned it, Nico, about Max pushing Red Bull in a set-up direction to combat that skinny rear wing. He asked for more front end. Now we know Max can live with that, you know, a really responsive front end, and I'll deal with the rear. And he found a way to balance it to make it suit what he can cope with and what he would like as a driver. And Red Bull responded, you know, positively towards him. Now that Laurent Mekies is in charge, they have a man with an engineering background as their team principal, who probably better understands the engineering demands of what his drivers are telling him than Christian Horner did, who was a racing driver in his career. And I think that Mekies Verstappen partnership took a huge step forward as well. And the team principal kind of went into bat with the engineers and said, look, I know your simulations say one thing, but I think we can make this work with what Max is saying, so let's give it a go. And to me, there was a lot of hope for Red Bull for the future out of this, and the future this season too. And that, you know, maybe Max now has, you know, not that he didn't have faith beforehand, but a lot of faith in Laurent Mekies, that he's a team principal that will listen to what he's saying. And he's been very critical of this car. 12 months ago, this was a monster of a car, and not in a good way. You know, scary closet monster that's going to keep you up in the middle of the night. But, you know, together they might now forge a very good partnership for Red Bull, that where Max feels he's being listened to, and we might see a little bit more of this. And isn't that great for the rest of this season as well? We got a title battle. Max is probably out of that title battle. He's just under 4 wins behind, but he might be able to get in amongst the McLaren drivers and really cause problems for the, you know, the papaya rules, or, you know, the Lando Oscar dominance. We'll see at tracks that are more suited to the McLaren car. But I think this is absolutely fascinating going forward now.
Yeah, I mean, careful, because Monza is such an outlier in terms of car wing setup, car setup. So we can't read too much into the performance of that now for going forward for these other tracks. But nevertheless, yeah, what I also heard that Laurent, being an engineer, actually had an impact now on this decision that Max was able to make, because he was, as the most senior person in the room with the engineering competence, was seeing this dynamic of the engineers seeing their simulation number and Max wanting to go a different route, and in the end called the shot and said, let's go with Max's feeling out there, and gave him the freedom, you know, to go down his route, which proved to be right. So it was an example of where Laurent really had a first really big impact on actual performance and winning a race together as a team.
Are you both saying that didn't happen then under Christian? Surely,
I'm not saying it didn't happen, but I think Laurent has got the expertise, the background, and the knowledge to have that conversation with the engineers, and the engineers then respect Laurent's views, because, you know, Christian, for all his strengths, isn't an engineer. And I think sometimes you need someone, you know, when you're having that engineering conversation, your senior person, if they understand all the engineering principles, is going to be able to call the shot, you know, in Max's favour this time, and not say, well, actually, Max, you know, the engineers probably know a bit better. let's go with them. I'm not saying that happened before, but it definitely didn't happen this time around.
Yeah, no criticism, of course, to Christian, who's been an awesome leader and one of the greatest we've seen in our sport. It's just that in this particular case, Laurent's experience.
There have been a few largely incident-free runs to the flag, or there have been some extremely dramatic races. Drivers appeared to play it safe for the inaugural race in Baku back in 2016, expecting to bank a good result if they stayed out of trouble based on extremely chaotic support races. When that led to little in the way of incidents, the approach changed a year later for what was perhaps the most chaotic race of the lot in 2017. There was plenty of drama in 2021, too, while last year's race also provided brilliant action courtesy of a thrilling fight for the win between Oscar Piastri and Charles Leclerc, and a last-lap collision between Carlos Sainz and Sergio Perez. Baku's extremely tight and twisty castle section, paired with an extremely long flat-out run at the end of the lap, creates a unique challenge of a high-speed street circuit with plenty of overtaking potential, while also punishing mistakes. It's race week. 5 storylines we're excited about ahead of the 2025 Azerbaijan Grand Prix from McLaren's Constructors' Championship bid to Red Bull's form. Here are the big stories ahead of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix in Baku. With the European swing of races now complete, it's time for the 2025 Formula One season to enter its final third. 16 races down, 8 still to go, and the remaining flyaway rounds kick off with a visit to Baku, which can often be a chaotic weekend. McLaren on the verge of the Constructors' Championship. So much of the focus this season has been on the battle between the two McLaren drivers, as Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris duel it out for the Drivers' Championship in what has become a two-driver race. With both performing at such a high level, 7 wins for Piastri, 5 for Norris, and 7-1-2s. Within that, the byproduct of such impressive point scoring is McLaren have a significant lead over the chasing pack in the Constructors' Championship. So significant, in fact, that they could wrap up the title this weekend in Baku. A combined finish of first and second, or first and third, would be enough for McLaren to become champions regardless of what second-place Ferrari do, while beyond that they just have to outscore the Scuderia by 9 points. If they manage to do that, then as long as they don't lose 12 points to Mercedes, or 33 points to Red Bull, then McLaren will be champions. Should the title be secured this weekend, it would mark the earliest point in a season that it has been won, with 7 rounds still remaining after the trip to Azerbaijan. Can Red Bull repeat their Monza form? Despite standing on the verge of winning a championship, McLaren were actually beaten for the first time in 6 races at Monza, and it wasn't by their nearest title chasers. Ferrari were victorious at their home race a year ago, but this time around it was Red Bull who took the win, with the result marking a significant turnaround in fortunes at Monza over the past 12 months. From being over half a minute adrift of the race winner in 2024, Max Verstappen beat the two McLarens by over 19 seconds this time around to secure his 3rd win of the season. It was Verstappen's first win since the other Italian round in Imola, a run of 9 races. While Verstappen appears too far back in the title fight to hold any realistic ambitions of his own, he could still be a major factor if Red Bull can replicate their Monza pace at any other venues. A new floor introduced last time out delivered a step forward, but both Verstappen and Red Bull pointed to setup choices as particularly significant. Baku will provide a very different challenge and was another track that Verstappen struggled at a year ago as Red Bull's form declined, so this weekend will give us further evidence of whether Monza was a one-off due to the unique track characteristics, or if McLaren could face more regular opposition from the defending champion. Antonelli's response after Wolff's comments. Italian rookie Kimi Antonelli has enjoyed very strong support from Mercedes throughout his career so far, both during his junior years and since making the step up to race for the team alongside George Russell this year. That support remains, but team principal Toto Wolff was the most critical we have heard him be towards Antonelli after the Italian Grand Prix, a race weekend that